One day there was an episode, and then that episode got built on, and then somebody took a decision to do X, and then it was X plus, and then it was X plus plus, and suddenly we had the Holy Cross Ardoin scandal.
Tá na híomháin na scáfara agus na heachtraí uafásacha a hit amach ag scoil na cruiseanéfa gramatha go smir is stair na driblóidí. Tharla sé seo 3 bliana in níg comhain tú ina an chéasta, nuair héalamar tar éis 3 blian gribh drim lábha tugad an aigean.
Is dóigh gur ascar chud mhór dothas a maithe sinú cuain tú aon chéasta. A beidir nar wathaí a hanne an dothas sin agus is cinse gróise sin fear a dúsgurt bhil firste.
North Belfast is a patchwork quilt of communities. It's often described that way, with Protestants and Catholics living cheek by jowl with each other, which meant that there was plenty of opportunity for conflict and for tension. It was grim. It was very grim. It's still pretty grim.
It has the highest incidence of sectarian deaths, bar no place in Northern Ireland. You couldn't put your nose out the door without somebody being murdered, basically, for years on end. It was an appalling place. I lived round the corner from the school for many, many years. It's my mother's school. The school that, if we had not lost our home in Ardoin, we were, as they say in Northern Ireland, we were put out by Protestant paramilitaries who emptied the 2 machine guns through our windows.
Bunscoil Chathlacach de Chalíní sé scoil na cruiseanéfa, lonathe ag bór bhóthar Ardoin I dúsgurt bhéal firste. Bhí sé ar an láthair sin sular hosnaí na triblóidí in 1969. Inis tá sé scuite amach an gceantar Chathlacach Ardoin íochtarach, áit a gcónaíonn for bhór na náltaí. Ag strácha bóthar 200 méadar a haon tríd is tá tíochta díalseach Glen Bryn.
The rare winter Glen Bryn and rud a chur an the lasser sa warach na guru G3 chur suas bratathe de chud on UDA nar hanig car ó Ardoin agus gur lug sin Jeremra ar rona dini seo chur suas nimratathe.
Tá go bhór insint ar an scéal a has cinse gur Harley rud an deartar ní leide ag mí bheitheh a chur tús agus bhí mar cinneal crowd Spáine leis an achran seo ar fad.
Well, whatever happened, that it was a tinderbox. It just needed some tiny incident like that to set it off.
Bhí ans blang ferriga lasta, bhrapab a Glen Bryn go raibh siad faoi léagar, agus timplathe ag náisiúnathe, agus dhearg siad a gantal ar an rud a bhí le feicáil sa gcóir gach lá. Tismathirí lena galíní beaga Cathlacacha ag siúil sús bóthar Ardoin I droscail na cruiseanéfa. An lád ar gceann chuir siad bach ar an móthar chun na daoine seo chuineáil amach as a gréocha protestúnach.
Bhí protestúní bogú maithas tuisgur bhil firste ó bhí na seachfudíon agus na tribladí mar réime bhí si de bogú amach tíomhaid an chathair, bhí chud mhór den ásteart imithe.
Protestants didn't want to bring their children up in areas that were dominated by painted curbstones, by flags, by paramilitarism, by drug dealing. Anyone who had any kind of job and any kind of money moved out of the area.
Hocu onc ar bhil firste fa dhébil sa héan mar chathair náisiúnta don chud is mó bhils go bhí móraigh na casci, móraigh na náisiúntóirí agus wathí na protestúní na díalsteirí go mór fa wagart agus seo.
There's a fear that this area is under threat as a Protestant community, that there is a conspiracy to try and, as they would say, green this area and to drive them out.
Ardoin is still very knotted. The knot of sectarianism is pulled tight and it needs to be loosened because a lot of this stuff, came out of a sense of hopelessness. Being left behind, being overlooked, and then being overlooked and neglected and then taking it out on the wrong people.
Lan na díalseoirí araig leis an imhí scoile, agus chinú an scoile chúna tuisgribh sira an thabhraigh ar na bacán. Winter Glenbryn agar féin faoin acronym CRUA, Concerned Residents of Upper Ardoyne. Agus bhí hismóirí na scoile ag bhaimú faoin anam RTE, Right to Education.
Bhí ábhar Jaran go leor ag muintir Glenbryn, tar siad na jogal siúil chun na siopaí ceannas grú ogla orthaí, tar siad grú clotha a caitheú ar hihí sacusan, gur bhaid siad fásta grú naisnithe ag géirí iad a ruagu, iad a bhhainú a mahas an ceantar, so bhaid siad an aonta dangan gur a bhégan an fád a hasú.
What you've got to remember is the unseen abuse which goes on night after night in this area by Republican thugs.
There was the whole summer during which there was the potential to resolve the problem. But despite all their efforts, there was no resolution. And we all knew when the September term began that this was going to be a big problem.
Le ord Tanasown, hogan RUC an cinna canúnach, likened dus na leirseóirí, Moraine le cad siúlahort dus na postí scoile.
Security chiefs say contingency plans are in place to ensure that the children are allowed to walk their normal route to school tomorrow morning, if no agreement is reached between community leaders tonight.
Bhí gachrod frí réir don chéad lá ar rais ar scoil, ach níorh éon súl le chun nimhnach sa bheith sé.
If the children become sort of bargaining chips, traumatised in any way, then we're in for a very bleak time.
Frightened children accompanied by their parents were subjected to abuse as they passed a picket by up to 200 loyalists on their return to Holy Cross Girls Primary School this morning.
Just fi sé, do creidte, an atmosphere a bhí an. Agus sílim go raibh sin rud níochamuid hana rive sa cahar seo. Just fi ahan rud jéirithe ag na páistí. Agus bhí sé ionta dearthair a bheith gorcar.
Ná bhí na gesahí bugad galanta leis a gré galanta leis an éidir scoil réad an scoil ach gur orthu síl fríd, caithú seile agus caithú clotha agus placard agus an scradial seo orthu ag scartú rudí na digú páiste bug fiú ach gurú an tarchan seo le hartarthú agus iad goisteach an na scoile.
7-year-old Erin Flood had her first day back at school today. Her mother says it will be her last for some time.
It was so numbing to hear these people calling your children these names, calling you these names, and to have to bring children, you know what I mean, through that door. I mean, it was too late to go back.
Tonight there was no sign of calm on the streets of North Belfast, and parents will now have to make their own decision whether their children will face this ordeal again tomorrow.
Imagine getting up for school every morning and fearing you're going to be spat at, you're going to have stones thrown at you, you're going to be called terrible names, the full glare of the world's media is on you, and you have to behave impeccably. Some people went low, the children went high.
No ag an amcéarna bhí feibrim cria ag Lanston array.
We won't be shying away, we won't be walking away. We're going to stay here until we get our right to return back to Carton Street via our traditional route.
Luú a bapar éontachtach crú na páisí géirí siúil ar a málach traditionta in their traditional route rudnar ceadú do oristí sin an cinneal jarcú bhí a go réhfuil. Ní ligeann sibh sé dúine siúil ar bhuthar gar a bhaithí so ní ligeann mistíobh sé siúil chun na scoile.
This conflict over a walk to school in Ardoyne highlights the growing level of sectarian tension here in North Belfast.
It's really hard to believe that this could actually take place in this, you know, the spirit of 2001 and the new political future.
Bhí léid de Nigel Dodds ar an shred, bhí Bill Hutchinson ó PUP ar an shred ag seaú leis na leirseoirí, ag ioncar na leirseoirí seo, ag caiú seile, ag caiú drá ide, ag caiú clotha ar na poistí bugus in inta seo, a níor de chuir deireadh leis.
What we need to do is to find a way forward, but we'll certainly not get a way forward in the context of street disorder, the sort of activity that we saw this morning on the part of the security forces.
Security forces clashed with loyalist protesters as they gathered near the gates of the Catholic school. Unionist politicians met the RUC chief constable to complain at what they described as heavy-handed tactics used by the police.
What we've got this morning is the RUC pushing people up here. Not only children and adults going to school, but also senior Republicans. And they were allowed to go up, they were allowed to abuse this community, and the police didn't turn on them. They turned on the Protestant community.
There were minor scuffles at the other end of Ardoyne Road as the RUC pushed back a crowd of nationalists.
Bhí an scéal faoi Holy Cross and Cade Rudd ar an nuacht CNN.
It's the news at 1. This is Sean. Good evening. There's been another security operation to escort children and their parents.
It had been thought that the situation couldn't get much worse today.
Halfway up the road, stones began to rain down among them.
And I wouldn't call a dog what they've called us, let alone young children.
A short time earlier, a pipe bomb had been thrown and one policeman suffered a broken collarbone.
Bhí sé uafasach. Daoine ag cai mála muin ag páistí. Sin an rud a bhí siad ag teanna, agus tháinig mé sin le mo thula héan.
Nobody's denying any child a right to an education. Every child's got a right to an education, but it's the people that they can bring up with them. Those are the people who pose the threat.
The issue is the behaviour of Republican adults from Ardoyne and their attitude towards the Protestant residents here in Glenbryn. And some of the adults who we've seen going up and down the road on different days are people who are involved in regular sectarian attacks against this Protestant community.
These people actually thought at the start of it that they had a good story to tell. It was only as events went on they realised they were being vilified, and rightly, right around the world. Now, that should have woken them up to the reality, but for some of them it didn't. It just made them feel even more a sense of victimhood.
Well, for Protestant communities right across the north of the city, tonight, tomorrow night, or later this week, whatever, there will be attacks again on their homes. And that is really the Republican agenda in the north of the city, and that is to drive out Protestant communities. We're dealing with an issue of ethnic cleansing. It is pure sectarian ethnic cleansing that motivates many of the Republicans in the north of the city.
John Hume used to say, an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. But if you're already blinded by hatred, you mightn't be able to see that quite so clearly.
Okay, everyone, morning.
Forced to run the gauntlet of sectarian hate for the third day in a row, the children from the Holy Cross School had walked just 100 yards this morning when they were attacked with missiles and golf balls.
An tríú lá agus an teannas ag cur harm wheel, hála seo.
One officer fell immediately in obvious distress. The extent of the leg injuries he sustained bearing witness to the savage nature of the attack.
Slim grabé nor as mas a hasnamach na an blasbom an boma caihu na páisi seo agus fiú Billy Hutchinson a miú cangala gi leis an UVF. Dúir sé gur chuir sé naire gnean hu díalsóirí lehéid.
Totally ashamed to be even connected to loyalism, never mind be a loyalist. Totally ashamed. No excuse for this officer lying over here on the ground, and he's not the first one this week, but you know, that is bad enough. But to do it whenever children are on their way to school, you know, I just am sick to the pit of my stomach, and I just don't want anything to do with this any longer.
Ag an am cíarna, hanna sé ráis agus há sé ag an ficid an lána é.
A go bhfuair sé higgin level sin, go bhfuair sé higgin punche sin tá sé omlan dochreite. A ní sin deireadh leis lanse ar ré in sin ar fein na seachtaí fáda.
These were people who had been left to fester by the government in Stormont, by the government in Westminster. They had been left to fester by their own political leaders. They were lost. They were lost and rudderless. And the children were the victims of that, unfortunately. And there's a generation of those children that will carry that memory. They'll carry that, I'm sure, to their graves.
Níor stéan na léir se hóiríach ar fáil lá a bháin, nar háirla na honsaithe aon de go man fór, agus é sin mar chórtha ó mós do bhaintear Vericá. Ach inis, bhí man na crinne díortha ar an ulcas a nua áireach I bhfad ó ardóin, áit a raibh na ráirchanna uafásacha ag leanúnta raig.
A lot of the international press left after the Twin Towers, and the local press didn't send up cameras every single day, the local broadcasters. And there are things happened there that weren't captured by the television cameras. They did hold up pornographic photographs with Father Troy's head superimposed on them. They held up posters accusing him of being a paedophile, and they threw urine and feces and hot water. It seems incredible, but those things did happen.
Duine eile bhí ar an láthair lá an ig lé ná an tathair Aidan Troy. Sagart paróiste áitiúil agus cathaoirleach na scoile.
Cheers this morning as Father Aidan Troy was congratulated on his birthday.
As bré gil bhantá na chúchas, cúg sé man dúlga sí sa faróiste le linn an taurig sin.
Figure A bhí inte ar bhela cróga a bheith glóir teamahanúid agus teascam nachrú chuid na haspigí rá heasta leis an urid canse amach in airna sé.
This has gone to new depths this morning. I have never thought that I would see this in any civilized street. We've got to remember that this is not a war. This is children going to school.
Ach gur duine é a hána gún deascairt fásta, sílam go munin cinneal cuacht áirithe le sin mar níorú bagaiste aige.
You're very welcome. Good to see you.
Sílam ar bhela daoine an ghlacu leis, mar gur hainneún tíomhaithe.
Earlier, Father Troy had driven to Orson-Uachtaráin for a meeting with President McAleese.
Now, I stayed in touch with them on a daily basis. All during that, I talked to Father Aidan virtually every day to reassure him that we had his back and that we would help in any way we could, and we did.
De réir mar a lean an imthaí ar aig, bhí sé soléir gur fullingt na galíní ag méadú. Agus rinne na díalseoirí a seacht níhil éon ragart a hacant agus a héana.
Tensions are high on both sides, but what we need to do is try and move towards a resolution. But the Catholic community need to take responsibility for what to do when they're taking the children to school.
Corian locht na tismahori nar chartíve a bheith siúl an bailach sin grú bailach cool on.
This is the so-called alternative route to the Holy Cross School in Ardoyne. Inclement weather conditions 5 weeks into the school term has seen cars brought to a virtual standstill as parents bid to get their children to school.
The alternative route, so-called, would have involved the children and the parents, in Margaret Thatcher's words, giving in to terrorism. It would have taught the children a lesson that their place in the world is at the back of the bus, that they are not equal.
Conditions are atrocious. You can see there, and you get stuck in the car coming up through the mud. You're coming through mud across another school's football pitch.
There is an alternative route, and I mean, let's face it, half a day of work and a couple of £100 of concrete would make that an alternative route. They're just being petty.
Like bhí siad a cailú an ca bólscrach a haníthe.
Bhí a gcónaí cinneal an teanna sin grú forréigean just, ar tí tarlaí, ar tí tuite má.
Loyalists attacked security forces in the Cambria Street area. Fireworks, up to 100 petrol bombs and other missiles were thrown at police and British soldiers. They say they also came under gunfire with 29 shots fired.
Trí bliana in níg cóin túíon an chéasta, ní raibh an díchomisnú arma bhí gealt an IRA cólíonta acu. Bhí lábhanúachtar aáil ag na handtoscaigh ar an dá haimh, agus bhí an próise síochána ar tinal.
Maybe there was a feeling that the peace process would have been put at risk if the police had enforced the law strictly, then one has to ask what kind of a peace process did we have, or do we have, where the rights of children to walk to school were less important than placating one part of the community.
In some ways, what happened in Ardoyne told us just how much work we needed to do. And that we needed to work very hard to end loyalist paramilitarism and to bring the DUP on board. That was essential if the peace process was not to be marooned or stopped in its tracks by an upsurge of sectarianism.
Chraig an chas gefil horach de verachanach ahrú santasach a bulletíoch daunda agus sa túisgurt. Beidir gur impig an mio nua seo an IRA a gcuid aramach chur as faim deireadh.
Is fa mi Yerifor vi an IRA in je ogert groshet in a genu G commissioner sin an feature you de vi Yerifor. A her valet in your person a staff na mach in a lersia shot in Ardoyne.
With what we have dealt with over the last 78 weeks here, I can't see it having any effect on that community up there.
They street things just going up there every day, so it'll probably be they're not going to hand in enough guns or it's not enough. It'll never be enough for them anyway, no matter what anybody gives the loyalists, it'll never be enough.
Bhí David Trimble a tofa mar chead ara an túisgurt an cúgu saoin agus Panic Session agus Mark Durkin an sin ad leis a cantar seo an Ardoyne I dro Jerry mí na saona agus bhí na cantina acu leis an phobal agus leis na díal srí go háirithe fi go dé a bhí woohoo in san cantar.
Recently, amidst local and international condemnation, the Protestant residents scaled down the protest to facilitate behind-the-scenes moves to find a solution. Last night, they voted to accept a deal put together by David Trimble and Mark Durkin at Stormont, which includes the promise of increased security in the area and a scheme of social regeneration. The residents' decision should mean the protest will be lifted from Monday.
I'm absolutely delighted. I'm particularly delighted for the children when they wake up this morning and find out that what they've been going through for these last 12 weeks is now over. I think that's absolutely marvellous. I'm just so relieved and so happy.
We brought them to the Aras, we gave them a great party. We told them how wonderful they were and how proud we were of them, to make them feel that they were part of a bigger picture, that they were not alone.
The thing that everybody saw on the television was how fantastic you were. You were just brilliant.
She's lovely. She's all right, and I think she's nice. I think the President's house is lovely because it has garden on. It's nicer than my house.
But we also realised that wasn't enough. To be meaningful, we had to outreach the people who were causing this problem. So we invited all of them to the Aras, and many of them came. And we talked it through with them in a frank but friendly way, telling them we were trying to find a way to understanding all this. And hearing back from them, they didn't really know why it happened either. It just kind of happened.
No matter what the provocation, it was not justified under any circumstances to do what the loyalists did to those children.
Sílam gur scanal nairach atá.
So sé inta Jacker sílam go foiil ag daoine áirithe in san soí seo déal le carmas agus tíimeid go foiil nachhfuil carmas umlan on agus go bhfuil feiban na móra in san sé chundaí.
An cacht is táhacht í sílam gaithí a handana. Ken sé Janu nach dar loy an rod Kierna reached.
We've had so many ups and downs in government in Northern Ireland, government in, government out for long periods, that maybe now that we have this government again, maybe they will bend their minds to ensuring that those flashpoint areas like Ardoyne are not left nurturing embers that can be fanned to a flame of communal discord as they were back when Holy Cross children took the brunt of that.